Good morning, everyone. My name is Maya Luria with TMC for Seniors, and we're continuing on with our Women's Health Month. Today, we have Nicole back with us. Nicole Vienneau has earned her master's degree in nursing and science and systems leadership from the University of Arizona. She believes it's important to continuously learn and grow in life's journey. She is also an integrative nurse coach. She's received that board certification through the American Holistic Nurses Credentialing Corporation and graduated with an advanced nurse coach certificate from the International Nurse Coach Association and a certificate in advanced clinical nutrition in an integrative nurse coaching practice from the Institute for Functional Medicine and INCA, which is your International Nurse Coach Association. So Nicole is here with us today. She has her own company called Blue Monarch Health, and she is with us to share all about women in exercise after menopause. And I know she's going to share a lot of great information for you. I know that this is something that people tend to struggle with. And so hopefully, I think she'll make it easier for us. So welcome, Nicole.
Thanks so much, Maya. Glad to be here.
So I've gone ahead and put your PowerPoint up for you. You do have an online audience along with an in-person audience today. So if you're watching us from home, please be sure to leave any questions for Nicole in the chat, and we'll address those afterwards.
Great. I look forward to those questions. Yay. Well, welcome, everyone. So glad you're here. Takes time for our in-person audience to get here and our at-home audience as well to get here. And so I'm just going to talk a little bit about women and exercise as we age. So as we're aging into this new stage of life, and it is a topic that is dear to my heart. I have plenty of experience in this topic, and I'll get to that in a minute. As you go through and as we go through the slides, just know that you can always reach out to me at any point. If, say, you're in the shower tomorrow and you're like, what was that thing she was talking about? Washing your hair. You can always email me after this presentation with those questions. I'll always reply back to you. Just know that I am also your resource for movement as we age. So there's me on the very bottom down there. When I was about 18 years old, I was part of a group fitness teaching program, and I found group fitness. Hi, welcome. I found group fitness because I would walk past the YMCA every day going to school. And one day I said to my mom, I really would love to go to the YMCA. It looks like they have some really great programs. So she said, well, of course, go to the YMCA. Let's get you a membership. So I went in, started taking classes, and was part of this group fitness movement, which is just, I don't know if any of you ever did group fitness. Remember when we used to wear tight shorts and bodysuits and jump around to music? Was anybody part of that? Yes. Okay, good. Raising hands. And some of us were not. We were never exposed to it, right? And that's okay too. There's lots of different ways to move as we age. So anyways, a teacher in the class saw me coming regularly and saw how much I enjoyed moving. And so she said, hey, we're going to do this class and you'll learn how to teach, be up at front and teach people how to move. And I was like, well, okay. Talked to my mom again. Mom, can I take this class? She said, well, sure, you should take the class. I think you'd enjoy it. So I started taking the class. And boy, was I terrible at teaching group fitness. Boy, was I terrible at teaching group fitness. It's a lot different than being part of. Instead, you have to be in front. You're leading the show. I couldn't even count a beat. 1, 2, 3, 4. However, I was just open to the process, never being very rigid about the process. Okay, so that being said, time goes by. I start getting pretty darn good at teaching group fitness. So good that I'm invited to be part of a national team that goes around the country and to teach adults how to teach people in their gyms. So I was very good at teaching group fitness. At one point, I was doing bodybuilding, which is a form of women's bodybuilding. This is just before I turned 40. A lot different than just moving on a daily basis. This type of training is super duper heavily committed. It becomes your life, and it's really not sustainable. It's not sustainable to look like this. However, we're conditioned in society that we should look a certain way, aren't we? Yeah, I see nods. I'm sure the audience at home is like, yes, we are conditioned that we must look a certain way. Now, this picture, of course, is an extreme of that measure. And I will say, at this point in time, it was probably the unhealthiest that I had ever been in my life. So just putting that out there, because looks and the way we look is different than the way we feel in our bodies. That's a big thing, a lesson that I have learned from doing this. This picture is about 10 years later. So this is still me doing a lot of high intensity interval training, working very hard. This is in my 50s. So here I am in 50s, still being able to do what I want to do in my body. However, at this point in time, I was noticing big changes happening to my body. One of them was that, boy, I was starting to not be able to have the capacity, a lung and heart capacity to really do these high intensity interval trainings. So I was noticing more breathlessness that I had never noticed before in my life. I was also noticing that the shape of my body was changing no matter what I did. And I was conditioned in life to eat less, exercise more. Conditioned. We are told that if we want to lose weight, we should exercise more and we should eat less. I want to dispel a lot of these myths as we age. Okay, so just pointing that out. This is me about 6 months ago. So now I'm in my mid 50s. So just putting it out there. Yeah, mid 50s. And I've dedicated since I was 18 moving in my body and teaching others how to move in their body. So a lot has changed in just 3 years' time, right? And I suspect as I age more, there will be more changes in my body because I'm looking at other people and I'm looking and watching people age. And I work with women all the time as they're aging. Okay, so I do have a number of certifications, and I just put them up here to show you that I've dedicated a lot of time and effort in understanding the biomechanics of movement, how the whole body is affected. It's not just a leg, a heart. We're whole beings. And so I look at every person as a whole being. You have a brain, you have a body, you have a heart, you have a spirit, you have relationships, you have all of these opportunities to live in your body the way you want to. I also, I will tell my story about going through perimenopause. So perimenopause was a really hard time for me. First of all, I would love to know in the audience, you can put in the chats, you can use an emoji button or a thumbs up or a thumbs down. And here in the audience that is in person, how often did people talk to you about menopause and the transition? Did anyone ever hear about menopause? Put up your hands. I mean, you heard about menopause, but did someone discuss it with you? I'm seeing a lot of no's. I see one hand raised that maybe some discussion happened. So here in the audience, we have about 1% of the people in here said, hey, someone talked to me about menopause. Well, I can honestly say no one had ever spoken about menopause, and I'm a registered nurse. Even in my schooling, there was very limited talk about menopause. We talked about the birth cycle and menses, puberty, and we just barely touched on menopause. And I think that is shocking to me because as I look around, I see we are all aging. We are all aging. And this tsunami of more aging is happening. People in my generation, 50s, are aging. Then we have people younger who are already coming into perimenopause, and they will be going through menopause as well. And we're barely talking about it. So my story of perimenopause, no one talked about it. And I just started to have anxiety. I'd never had anxiety in my life. I'm used to getting up in front of people all the time. And all of a sudden, I wanted to retreat. And I didn't understand why. I had no clue why this was happening to me. I just knew something was wrong. I didn't even know that I was anxious until my husband said, "Gosh, it seems like you're anxious." And I said, "Oh my gosh, this is why I love you so much, because you just put your finger on what I'm feeling." But I had no idea that I was anxious. I just felt revved up and my heart was palpitating and all of this craziness inside I was feeling. And now if you think back to perimenopause, and I'm not assuming that anyone is in postmenopause or menopause at this time, because it's very different for very many women. We can think that someone is in postmenopause, or we can think that they're in perimenopause or whatever, but we really have no true, when we look at somebody, that they're in those stages. So I was like, whoa, why is this perimenopause? What is this? Which got me thinking, oh, Nicole, you're in your late 40s, early 50s. Maybe you're in perimenopause. So as a nurse and human who likes to learn, I'm like, what is this stage? What is going on? This led me to learning more about menopause specifically, and how movement can really help support us as we transition through the aging stages. So, all right, let's get going. So we know about perimenopause, menopause, postmenopause. So there are three distinct stages. Perimenopause is the stages that lead up to menopause, which menopause is a distinct one moment in time when you haven't had your period for 1 year. It's just one moment in time. After that moment, you're in postmenopause. So we can get to menopause in numerous amounts of ways. We can have surgical menopause where bits are taken out and we're just pushed into menopause quickly. And or we can flow through the stages, keeping all of our bits, but our hormones start to go a little wacky. Then we move into menopause for that one moment, and then we move into postmenopause. But what I really want you to understand as women here, these stages are normal and natural signs that we are aging, transitioning to a new phase of life, which is exciting, transitioning into a new phase of life. Now, when we went through puberty, remember way back in the day, remember, it was exciting. We're starting to develop our breasts. When is our period going to come? Like all of those things were really like hyped up when we were younger, right? And then we're into this transition in menopause and like no one talks about it. So I'm trying to dispel that. Like, let's talk about it, creating environments where we can talk about it. So this is why I'm here. Because, we are aging. All of us, every single person here is aging. It is the truth. We are not stuck in time. We are moving through time, and we are only here for a short time when you really think about it. So how is it that you want to age? Have you ever asked yourself that? Yeah. What does it mean to you to age? So if you were to say, okay, this is how I'd want to age, tell me some things. And maybe in the chat, you can type it into the chat bar. So tell me, just shout out.
Gently.
Gently. Okay, gently. Okay.
Wanting to stay active.
Stay active.
Slower pace.
A slower pace. Okay. Who do you want to age with? Your cat. Yeah. Okay. Yes. Right. Who else? And what else?
Someone said they want to age online, said they would like to age healthy and active.
Healthy and active. Yes. The reason why I say that is like, we need to choose, right? We're supposed to choose. We don't have to wait till someone tells us this is how we want to age. We just say, I would like to age. This is how I'd like to do it. I want to do it how I want to do it, with who I want to do it, when I want to do it, yeah, and how I want to do it. Like, we make those choices. No one else can make it for us. Okay. So, because wouldn't it be great to just do the things you wanted to do when you want to do them, and do them all the time without anybody telling you yes or no? Yeah. I would love to age and be completely independent my whole entire rest of my life. I don't want somebody telling me what to do or how to do it or who to do it with. And that's my goal as I age. So our goals are all going to be different, and that's the beauty of these kinds of conversations. So this was the reason why we're here, is talk about exercise. But I just want to throw that out there, because the decisions you make, like showing up today to just talk about this and learn about a little bit about this, helps you support yourself as you age. So the type of physical activity you do or the things you don't do help or hinder your hormone balance. So we're talking specifically about menopause, post-menopause, and just knowing, and I'm not going to read this whole slide, but just knowing that the right kind of exercise type, your intensity, how hard you do it, the time, the amount of time you do it, and the recovery time that you have in between it will affect all of your hormones. So if you're someone who likes to exercise a ton, and you like to run a lot, and you like to do long distance kind of exercises, during the stages of menopause, it isn't always beneficial to do that all the time. So sometimes that amount of long endurance training elevates our cortisol and keeps it elevated, and we start to sleep less, want to do less, we're not recovering well enough. And we start to feel the stressors in our body because it affects our hormones, because a lot of them become elevated like cortisol. Some go lower because of that. So just knowing that the right kind of exercise, and I'm not going to be super like pinpointy on exactly the right kind, because I will say that everyone is completely different, and it depends a lot on what your history is too. If you are a person who has exercised for the majority of your life, you're going to find that some of these are slightly different than someone who has never exercised and is just wanting to learn how to at this stage in life, which you always can. There's always time. There's always a willingness to explore new things. So all of these things kind of revolve with each other. Because this class is for you if you've heard a lot of science and you're not sure what to do or how to do it, and you still want to do it, right? This is going to dispel a little bit of the myths, and it's going to talk about exercising, yes, so we can live in longevity doing the things we want to do, how we want to do it. And I'm going to focus on a little bit on hormones. And I will tell you that I'm only going to give you a slice of the pie. Because if I tried to shove down a whole pie into your mouth, it would not feel good. And we would feel bloated and distended, and it would not feel right. So I'm only going to share a little bit. And of course, if you want to learn more, potentially partner with me, you can send your email address. I have a little list over here. You can add your email address. You can put your email address into the chat, and I'll follow up with you. And you can always email me. I am always open to the discussion. Okay. Because old is when you give up. And until then, you are spectacular. And I love this because just moving how you can, especially with other women, is very important as we age, because women are much more social creatures than men are. And because moving with other women helps build up our serotonin, which is our very feel-good hormone. It also helps with our oxytocin, which is our love hormone. And both of those hormones together help reduce our stress hormone, which is cortisol, which as we age, cortisol is a higher style of hormone, especially in our lifestyle today. Okay, so we're going to talk a little bit about hormones, how they affect us, a small amount of those hormones, because there are many, many of them, and some things to consider as you sustain your life in independence, and benefits of reducing potentially some of the symptoms you might still have in postmenopause and menopause, and how you apply this information to your life. So quick slide. I know it's a busy one. I talked a little bit about puberty. The beginning of the slide on the left-hand side. Basically, age in years is at the bottom. On the right-hand side is estrogen. This is a slide that is from New Zealand. So you see estrogen spelled a little bit differently. but still the same thing. When we're first like 0 age, we don't have much estrogen. Like there's not a lot. Then we come through puberty, we see the estrogen levels rising. Yes. And then this is the normal time when we are having our menses and the cycle of specifically estrogen. There are no other hormones really listed in this. There's a lot of other hormones that are affected as we move through the stages of our cycle. Remember when we used to have our period? Some of us may still have our period. I used to love having my period because it was like, had my period. It's a reset, I felt. A reset for having my period, and then I could move on into the next month. When I stopped having my period, I lost that. I felt like I lost having my reset. So interestingly enough, I've learned a new way of resetting myself, which is to follow the moon cycle. The moon. When the full moon is full, when the moon is full, that's when I can say, okay, that's the time when I'm having my period. So then I can reset and flow through the whole month, feeling like I am in that cycle again, which has been really helpful for me. So I'm not sure if that's something you can take away. If you want to try to cycle yourself and feel like you're having this cycle again. It's not that the hormones are going to be changing. However, we're using the moon as a time vessel to tell us when we are cycling, even though hormones are not doing the same thing as this, like this beautifulness of rhythm. Then, of course, if we did have pregnancy, we saw a big spike, big spike in estrogen, then we would return back into this normal thing. And then what it doesn't show over here is when we come into menopause, that estrogen goes bonkers. So do all the other hormones. They go up and down and crazy, and some are low and some are high, and you feel that, woo, craziness. And then as we go menopause, that moment in time, then into postmenopause, estrogen itself bottoms out. We still make estrogen, but it's not as high as what it once was. Okay. So here's another way to look at this. Here's a lot of different other hormones like luteinizing hormone, follicle stimulating hormone, progesterone. I don't need to know all of them, but what I want you to see is this rhythm. And this is when we are predictable. We're having our menstrual cycle at the beginning left. It's very predictable. Then we have the phase of perimenopause, which is, for some of us, crazy time. Not that we are crazy, and I don't want to belittle that because anxiety is a very troublesome symptom of being in perimenopause. But you can see how the hormones are no longer cyclic. Instead, they're all over the place, very unpredictable. And so we start to see our lives feeling unpredictable at this time because there is no rhythm. Just the hormones went bonkers. And then we move into more of post-menopause, and this takes a series of years, potentially like that, if you have different parts of your organs removed. Then we move into more of a new normal of menopause, where we are just seeing a more stationary kind of feeling instead of this up and down. Okay, I just wanted to have that in there so you could understand a little bit more just about estrogen and the way in which some people, because if you've never ever heard about perimenopause or didn't ever suspect that you were going through perimenopause, it's very important to know that the things that you feel are real. And that when you go to your healthcare provider and they say, there, it's okay, this is normal. That's not normal to feel those things. And there are things that we can do. So I want to just throw that out there because as we age, we will again hear that. Don't worry, it's okay, you're just aging. Well, I'll tell you, there are things that we can do, and we must stand up for ourselves as we age through all of the stages of aging. Okay. And if you're not getting along with your healthcare provider, it's time to find a new one, to find someone who will have those conversations with you and support you as we age. Okay, I get on my soapbox because I'm in the healthcare space and I love to have the conversations like that because that's the only way that we will have longevity doing the things we want to do, with who we want to do them, how we want to do them. Okay, going back to estrogen again. So I've got the slides up here. estrogen affects pretty much every organ that we have as women. And this affects men too, but we're not talking about men. We're only talking about women. So when we start to see a decline in estrogen, it affects pretty much every one of our organs, because we have receptor sites on almost every one of our organs. So the receptors are sitting on the brain and they are saying, estrogen, where are you? I need you to function in a certain way, but you are not here. Where did you go? Because it's a normal, natural way of aging. So we see it in our cardiovascular. So I want to talk about cardiovascular system and how it relates back to your brain, because cardiovascular system is all the vessels within our body, right? All the blood vessels. We have our veins, we have our arteries, we have all the organs that have veins and arteries, like it's all connected. And our brains have veins and arteries in them. And so when we have a reduction in estrogen, what we see is a big impact to our cardiovascular system. So if you think back to when I was saying I was noticing that I couldn't keep up the stamina that I used to when I was younger, it's because estrogen was declining. I didn't know it, but it was. Estrogen was declining, and my vessels that help support my blood going through were becoming a little bit firmer because of less estrogen. So that's not a good thing, because estrogen has been protecting our blood vessels and our hearts and all of our brains and all of the other bits of organs since we've had it. But now when it's gone down, we don't have that protective mechanism. So we do see that women have higher incidence of cardiovascular disease as we age, because we don't have that protective mechanism of estrogen. So this is a natural aging process. There are things we can do to support that though. Okay, so just know that your liver is affected. Of course, your reproductive system is affected. Your muscles are affected, your tendons, your ligaments. So if anyone's having knee pain or hip pain, it could be related to reduction in estrogen. Your thyroid, your breasts. I noticed, boy, my breasts got bigger when I went through the stages of perimenopause, menopause, now post-menopause, because there's it's a little bit complicated, but we are seeing changes in our estrogen. And I just put this up here so you can see this, like how it works in your body instead of just seeing the pieces. So you can see like of course, you know where your brain is, right? This is a test question, right? Test question. Your thyroid, your lungs, your heart, your breast, your liver, your intestines, your muscles, your joints, your uterus, all the blood vessels, all of these organs are affected because of a reduction in estrogen. So let's talk about muscles, because this is super important. What is muscle to you besides a gun? What is muscle? What does it mean to you, to your life? Strength. What were you gonna say?
No, it burns calories too.
Burns calories. What else? Chats are good if you want to throw anything in chat. Yes. Okay. So muscle supports your structure. It also has a lot of metabolic benefits to it. Okay. So when we hit so first of all, let me talk about the slide so you know what you're looking at. This is not steak and eggs, although, it could be. Could be like a big chunk of steak, because that is what, in essence, what we're eating is muscles. But yeah. So anyways, what we have in the first slide, 30 years old, we have this kind of tan layer, light tan. That's our skin on the outside. Then the dark part is your muscle. Then the small little, looks like an egg. That's your bones, your bone in the middle there, in your marrow, your bone and your bone marrow. So when at the age of 30, we already start to lose muscle. So then when we're 50, if we're not doing anything, if we're very pretty sedentary, we will lose more muscle. And then by the time you can see how the muscle looks like it's breaking down. Now this is a very rudimentary kind of slide. It just really is pointing out, I don't want to get too technical, but if we don't do anything, the old adage of if you don't use it, you lose it is really true when it comes to muscles. And when we think of muscles as structure, how many of us in here are worried about falling? Yeah, potentially. And when don't think falling is a thing that I'm worried about, I think of after I've fallen and I break something. That's more what I'm worried about. So what I think of is this muscle as structure. It is your actual structure. And I'm standing here tall and big because it is supporting your bones and your ligaments and joints and your structure of your body and your ability to be aware of yourself in space. That's proprioception. So your ability to feel your body in space. With less muscles, we have trouble doing that. And with breakdown of musculature, there's less support and structure in your body. And there's a difference between muscle and fat. And you can see in the 80-year-old, there's a lot more tan because there's more adipose tissue that can develop as the muscle declines. So just looking at that and thinking about how that in itself affects longevity or takes away from longevity. And choices that we make on a daily basis to help support ourselves to be able to maintain muscle and potentially make muscle instead of letting it decline and us losing our independence because we are so frail that we need support and help. And that's, if that happens, that happens. It's part of life. However, what can we do in the meantime instead of just waiting for that to happen? Okay. So I want to talk about cortisol. Cortisol is a stress hormone. That's what we know it as, right? I also want to point out that it is also a metabolic hormone. It helps us metabolize. It's also an energy hormone. It's not a bad hormone. And so many times everybody talks about cortisol is bad, bad, bad. And it really isn't. It's supportive of our bodies. However, we need to find ourselves in a sweet spot. I would like to point out that all of our hormones affect other hormones. They are not just living in solitude. So when we only talk about one hormone, I want you to know that one hormone affects a lot of other hormones. And if they are low, it affects them differently. If they're high, it affects those other hormones differently. So just throwing that out there just to know that you are a bigger picture than just cortisol, just one, or just estrogen. There are a lot of mechanisms that go on. In fact, it is so miraculous. Our bodies, aren't they? It's like we're just trusting our bodies that they know what to do. And that is such a freedom thing too. I'm going to trust my body that it knows what to do, and I'm going to do everything I can to support myself in doing that. Yes. Okay. So we also know that cortisol follows the circadian rhythm. I'm sure you've heard of circadian rhythm. The sun cycles, the light, the dark. So just having that in your mind, the light and the dark. Okay. Here's another graph I point out because this is a normal, I'm putting in quotation, normal cholesterol level, blood cholesterol over the day. What we see in this slide, what did I say? Cholesterol. Thank you for, yes, I did mean cortisol. Thank you for clarifying for me. So we see the cortisol in the early mornings, at 1 a.m., 2 a.m., 3 a.m., it's very low. You see this on the left? This is your time. Yeah. And then we see the blood cortisol on the vertical axis, the amount of cortisol in our blood. And we see that around the time frame of 5 a.m., it's starting to go up. 6 a.m., 7 a.m., 8 a.m., we start to see things coming down. This is a normal, I'm just quotations, right? Because everybody's really different. However, this is what they've seen as a theme. So in a normal life, this is what happens. We are sleeping, we wake up. Who wakes up at 5 a.m.? Yeah, just naturally sometimes. Yes, and sometimes it's like, no, hell no, I'm retired. I want to get up. I want to get up when I want to get up, which is another choice, right? And then normal mechanism, sometimes I just open my eye up at 5 a.m. But I'm not quite ready to get out of bed, but my body could be because it's saying, hey, I'm getting ready for the day. Cortisol is rising. I feel most productive at 7, 9 a.m. Then I start to see it go down. There's another rise around 12, 3 o'clock, 2, 3 o'clock. Then it starts to go down, and we see it go down around 8, 9, 10 o'clock at night, 11 o'clock, because guess what we're trying to do at that point? Go to sleep. Yes, time to go to sleep. So cortisol is high in the mornings. We see it a little dip, and then it goes down because we are following the circadian rhythm. That is our normal way of being. Now, throw in all of the mechanisms of life, and that turns into not our normal way of being, because now we have all of this light in our world. We have cell phones, we have televisions, we have just constant barrage of things coming at us when we could be sleeping. Instead, we're awake. So just knowing your own cortisol, the normal cortisol, is important because it does affect how you function, and it does affect your energy and your metabolism a lot. And if we can try to, not that I need you to know this circadian rhythm, it's just an example. Really, we want to be sleeping at 10 or so at night, and then getting some good rest so that we could wake up in the morning at 5 o'clock when the cortisol is starting to rise. Now know that there's, of course, melatonin, ghrelin, leptin. There's some other thing, a whole bunch of other hormones that are affected by this too. But if you can start to think of yourself as 12 hours of light and 12 hours of dark, it'll make a big difference in your cortisol levels. And because your estrogen is also declining, and our cortisol levels, if we have high levels of stress, and that could be perception of stress, and sometimes people don't even know that they're stressed. I see that quite a bit. They don't know that their cortisol is high, and they're wondering why they can't sleep. It's usually just getting someone back on a 12 and 12 rhythm of following the circadian rhythm that can really help with sleeping. Because I will say that no matter how much exercise you do in your life, if you're not sleeping, it's not going to affect you. The exercise will cause more stress, and it is not a good thing if you're not resting and getting good night's sleep. So looking at that and seeing, is there a way for me to enhance my rest cycles? Some of us need to get outside in the morning as early as possible in the day and just get not sun in our eyes, but being exposed to the light. Less sunglasses in the morning for 10 to 15 to 20 minutes so that we're getting the natural light come in our eyes. It resets our body, tells melatonin to turn off, and helps cortisol to come up so that we are ready for the day. And then vice versa at night, where we want to come dimmer into our eyes, less light into our eyes. Because as cortisol goes up and estrogen goes down, we see a lot of belly fat, back fat, middle back fat, bone loss, muscle loss. Our sleep-wake cycles are irregular because the cortisol is messed up and the estrogen is going down. We also see skin changes. Anybody notice their skin change? Yeah, a little bit crepey, a little bit different, right? Yeah. So we want to try to find cortisol in our sweet spot. So how exercise can impact cortisol? Now, we're all at different levels of movement, all of us here on this call. Some of us exercise often, and some of us don't exercise at all. So for those of us who are liking high intensity exercise, we recommend that you don't do that late in the day. Because if you're exercising high intensity late in the day, cortisol rises with exercise. So if you want to rest, don't do your exercise late in the day. You want to do it in the morning because your cortisol is already high. You want to use that metabolic and energy hormone to your best advantage and exercise in the morning. I would recommend almost all exercise in the morning, unless you like going for a walk in the evening with a friend, and it's not a super vigorous walk. It's just enjoying that time together, because that will increase serotonin and oxytocin. It will slow down your cortisol, enhance melatonin so that you can sleep. So just looking at that. If we exercise and don't get enough recovery, or if we're exercising and we're already completely exhausted, it's pointless. We need rest instead. So just pointing that out, because again, we're trying to get ourselves on this 12-hour cycle of light and dark. So cortisol is highest. Sorry, I don't know why I have lowest. I meant to put highest early in the day. So use it as your advantage. And so that you can follow the circadian rhythm. And of course, any light kind of exercise, which is just a leisurely kind of walk, maybe some gardening that isn't like hiking up like 25 pounds of dirt everywhere and shoveling, that's more higher intensity. So do that in the morning. Plus, who wants to garden like in the middle of the day here anyways, right? Right, gets too hot. So just looking at your environment and trying to follow along the cycle of the sun can really help change the way you move in your body. I did touch on this earlier, more exercise and eat less if you want to lose weight. And this is a myth we have to dispel, because when we're in a low energy system, or low energy system meaning we don't have enough calories, it just causes way more stress in our bodies. And when we are in high stress, that cortisol goes up, and what did you see? Belly fat, back fat, bone loss, can't sleep, because we're already just maintaining ourselves in this high stress environment. So when we eat less and we're depriving ourselves and we're exercising more, that's not a good state to be in. So we want to do this moderately. So I like to follow the American Heart Association's recommendations, which are pretty simple. Exercise at least 150 minutes of moderate intensity each week. How much is 150 minutes? How many hours is that? 2.5 hours per what? Week? That's not really that much. And do you have to do it all at once? No. Right. In the week, it is so much better for us to do shorter bouts of exercise if we want to do exercise, like physically getting outfits on and doing exercise, preparing for exercise. It's better for us to do short bouts, like 10 minutes, 15 minutes. And do it when? Early. In the morning. Yes, early in the day somewhere. Yes. Okay. Or you can do 75 minutes of vigorous intensity. So I'm talking like hiking those bags of dirt, shoveling rocks, gardening like that. That is vigorous. Moving, breathlessness, that's vigorous. So looking at yourself and seeing, like, my vigorous is going to be different from everybody else's vigorous. Your vigorous is going to be different than someone else's vigorous. So we're thinking of that, our perception of what vigorous is. What do you think vigorous might look like?
Riding a bike, maybe.
Riding a bike, yeah. Running.
A lot of sweat.
A lot of sweat. I love this. Yes, and breathing hard, like, oh, this is hard. Like, I'm telling myself, this is hard. Like, that's a vigorous kind of workout. And maybe 10 minutes of that. If you did 10 minutes of that for a week, that would get you to this, wouldn't it? 75 minutes. Give or take a few minutes, right? Yeah. So 10 minutes, vigorous, working hard. Now, of course, you want to perceive that, right? How hard is hard to me? Because hard to me is different than hard to you. So it's our perception. And there are great scales out there. If you just put into the Google machine, rate of perceived exertion, my perception of exertion, you can find a scale that says, like, I am exercising hard and I'm breathless. This exercise feels too extreme. I better slow down. So that you can start to say, oh, this is where I fit in onto the scale. And I would like to be vigorous, it depends on what scale we're in, but looking at a scale of 1 to 10, maybe in a 6 to 7 range is going to be a good place for you to be in a vigorous. Or doing this 150 minutes of moderate intensity. What do you think of moderate as? Walking, brisk walking uphill, a little bit of breathlessness, but not a gasping breathlessness. Not I'm thinking, oh my gosh, this is so hard. When is this going to stop? That's not a good place to be, because it's going to increase our cortisol and be a little bit too challenging. Now, there are times when we can build our way up. We could do a combination of both of those things. And then there's this whole thing called weightlifting. So that was just cardiovascular. We want to also weight lift in the sense of picking up heavy things. Picking up heavy things and putting them down. Remember the Hans and Franz? Do you remember Hans and Franz back in the day? Don't know Hans and Franz. I should have put a slide up on here. So at least twice a week, we should be lifting up heavy things and putting them down, whether that's in a structured weightlifting program or whether that's, hey, we just got our water bottles delivered. Can I pick those up? Can you? Sure. Could you learn a little bit better, safer technique to pick them up? Likely. Yeah. My husband and I always tell him, don't touch the water bottles. Leave the cat litter in the car because I want to pick it up. Because I want to put that into my daily life. I don't want to just only focus on going to a gym and weightlifting. That's like totally not my thing. I want to be able to just actively move in my body. And the American Heart Association says you gain even more benefits by being active at least 300 minutes or 5 hours per week. So that's just if you want to be like stellar. And you may already be doing this, right? 300 minutes, 5 hours, active. Have you ever paid attention to how much you move? Some of you are nodding yes. Some are like, oh, I don't know. I really don't know. I couldn't tell you how much I moved this week. So maybe that's something you start with. How much am I moving? Laundry is included. Cleaning is included, right? Grocery shopping, that's included. It's less time in the chair. All right. And then, of course, you're going to increase as you go, gradually. You should not just wake up and do, 40 miles. We would regret that. Yes.
Can you go back a slide?
Sure. Yeah. This one?
How much weightlifting you should do in a day?
2 days. 2 days. So they just, there's a lot of different studies on this. We just want to make sure that we're focusing on strength training at some point around twice a week. So we want to focus some time and say, this is me devoting time to making more muscle. Making more muscle. Mm-hmm. Yeah, sure.
What do you think about the hand weights if you use those at home? But if you're using them, do you use ones that it's difficult for you to use?
Yeah, so for our listeners at home, the question is, what do I think about hand weights? And I say, heck yeah. I love hand weights. So hand weights are great. So I will get to a slide here. I'm going to get to it shortly. Let's see. Just so you know, I have a women's group. And if you're interested in being part of it, you are welcome to join it. It's called the Menopause Movement Mission. It's at bluemonarchhealth.com/MMM. You can find more about it. I want to get to a slide because I love this slide because when I'm working with women and what we see on the slides and the photos of women lifting weights, what do we normally see women lifting? Pink weights or purple, and they're super little, like 2 pounds. And I always joke, and I am joking, but lovingly not. We have to lift heavier than our purse, right? Your purse weighs more than that 2 pounds little pink weight. So when we're thinking of weight training with weights, we want to think that it does need to be challenging. Because if I'm just doing bicep curls, and this isn't how you do one, it's just so that people at home can see me doing one. If I'm doing a whole bunch of these and I'm doing bicep curls and do like 55 repetitions and it's so easy, I'm putting stress on my joints and ligaments that's completely unnecessary. Yes, I want to put stress on my joints and ligaments because I want them to be strong. However, I don't want to do so many repetitions that I'm putting too much pressure and stress, like a negative stress on my joints. So I want to try to lift a little bit heavier with safe form, controlled form. So I do suggest if you've never lifted weights in your life that you actually work with somebody who knows what they're talking about. And you can easily find people around to do that. Yes.
Can you use stretch bands instead of weights?
Sure can. Yeah, any resistance type of stretchy bands are great to use. You don't even need to use weights potentially because your body is weight. So as you're sitting here, instead of just sitting here and listening, you could maybe stand up and sit down 10 times, right? You're watching television, you can stand up and sit down.
Someone commented and said that they've been moving while watching the presentation, so.
Yay, go you! Right, we don't have to just sit here, although we're conditioned that we should sit here because it's polite, all that stuff. Yeah, so just thinking about that, how does that fit in your life? How could you potentially think about moving more in your life? And of course, you want to increase the amount of intensity gradually over time. You don't want to just start going crazy because, of course, want to stay safe. Yeah. I wanted to just point out one slide. Let's see. I'm just going through here. So injuries, talking about that just real brief. Injuries definitely can happen as we age because we learned that estrogen is depleted, and estrogen, we have receptor sites on our ligaments, joints, bones, and muscles. They're there too. So with reduction in estrogen, it does affect our ligaments, joints, and bones and muscles. So we need to warm up. We can't just pick up the weights and go crazy, right? We need to get our body moving, feel that heat building in our body before we start just jumping into weight training or jumping into a higher intensity interval training. And it takes more time to do that than when we were young. It does. It takes me about 20, 25 minutes to get warmed up so that I don't feel the creaks in my shoulders. I don't feel the creaks in my knees. I take time and gentleness in my body. Instead of when I was in my 20s and 30s and 40s, I would just go crazy and just go right into stuff. Now I am gentler and kinder to myself. And that's how I see myself aging. I'm gentler, I'm kinder, and I'm also not frail. We don't want to get to the point of frailty. We want to use what we have till we are called to wherever we go after this life, right? Want to use what we have, do what we want, when we want to do it. So just knowing that you do need to warm up a little bit longer and also cool down a little bit longer. So there's time after where we need to restore ourselves and not just jump into the next thing in our life. I actually take time now because I know that I want to enhance my testosterone a little bit, which helps me build muscle. So I actually have to recover more. So I will lay on the floor. I'll put my feet up. I'll put a little blanket on and I'll listen to some music and I'll just breathe after a workout. I'll do some stretching before that. And then I'll just sit for about 5 minutes so that my cortisol level comes down and I can actually feel the effects of my exercise. Not in the sense of, oh my gosh, my muscles are so sore. No, I don't get to that point. We want to just do the movement so that we feel our muscles working, not to the point of being so sore that we never want to exercise again. So there's right ways and less right ways. But and I love this. Pay attention to your need to be perfect and release strong opinions. This rigidity as we age that I do notice in some people. I don't do it like that. I don't need anybody to tell me that. Letting go of some of that will help so much with your recovery and reduction in cholesterol. And at the same time, it's okay to speak your mind. Don't say that. We must speak our mind, but let's let go of some things. Just let them go. Let those flow. Because this whole idea of injury happens a lot of times because we are so rigid. So just thinking of that, how can I be less rigid and more open to this process? Oh, and I have this slide. This is from me. This isn't a quote from anybody. Get someone to coach you, help you, because yes, you can afford it. You can. You'd be surprised at how much you can afford to have somebody help you develop an exercise program just for you. So some of the key points, we want to get our hormones to interact and influence each other in a positive way. So there are some, if you have the handouts, there are some other hormones that we didn't talk about. So there's testosterone, growth hormone, there's progesterone, melatonin, we touched on some of that. We touched on some of those, but just so you know, they all interact with each other, and exercise can positively enhance and decrease the risk for all-cause mortality. It's one of the biggest factors we can do and choose to do to enhance our well-being and reduce the chances of us dying. I'm like, yes, sign me up. And then we know that we're going to try to exercise early in the morning because our cortisol is highest then. We allow for recovery as the day goes on so that we can sleep. And then think about the circadian rhythm a little bit more. How can I enhance that in my life? When we do have intensity, we want to try to get our muscles to be fatigued. And that takes practice if you're not used to it. What does fatigue mean? Well, we'd have to explore that a little bit. And it's okay to try it and explore yourself. You'll be surprised. You'll be like, okay, I'm fatigued. That's done. 10 minutes, I'm done. And looking at short intensities, right? We could do 40 to 45 minutes of super, super high intensity. That would be like 10 minutes a day for 4 days a week. There's different ways of training. So, and then think of yourself, maybe you want to do 10 minutes once a day or 10 minutes twice a day, different times of the day. Maybe you wake up right away and you do something, then you wait 2 hours and do something again, but you're still doing it in the morning. That's harder intensities. It's not just easily, it depends on what stage you're at. Okay, I'll not get too technical. And then we want to try to do multiple things. So not just one thing. That's how we get injured, truth, if you do the same thing over and over again. And then, are you recovering enough? Recovery. What does that mean? Are you able to sleep? That's a big indicator of recovery. If you're not able to sleep so well, there's something going on that needs to be tweaked a little bit. Maybe you could talk to your healthcare provider about that. And maybe it isn't just taking an Ativan before you go to sleep. Maybe it's something else in your lifestyle you could tweak that will help support your rest and recovery. How can you enhance serotonin and oxytocin? Those are your feel-good hormones. Maybe it's conversations with a great friend. Maybe it is laying for a few moments outside watching the sunset. What is it that's going to make you feel good in your body and mind and spirit? New clothes, going shopping and just putting them on and saying, yes, I feel good in this. I feel good. I took time to take care of myself. That feels good. That's loving yourself. That enhances your serotonin, your oxytocin. And then maybe even exploring Tai Chi, or there's a mindful yoga class here that they do, that you can sign up for, or Qigong, or getting outside with a friend and just connecting on a loving level. Those relationships that are hard, those are not the ones you want late at night. Those are the ones you want in the morning when you have lots of energy. Yeah. So just looking at those types of things. All right. I'm open for some quick questions if you would like some.
We'll go online first.
Okay, great.
So thank you so much, Nicole. I do want to ask about, living in Arizona and with the heat, if you really would like to exercise outside, do you have any tips for how we can stay active, particularly in the summertime?
Get up early. That's the biggest factor, is get up early, because we know that our cortisol is highest at 5 a.m., 6 a.m., 7 a.m. And if you want to go outside and exercise, that's the best times to do that. So getting out early, of course, you want to stay hydrated. That's a no-brainer, right? I don't need to tell you that, but stay hydrated. I should say, I do need to tell you that because that's something that I'm working on. I'm trying to drink a certain amount of water because I'm just not, that's one of those things I want to improve. My choices of what I want to improve. So yes, or late at night. Get over to your next door neighbor. Come on, we're going for a walk today. And it's towards nighttime, and things are cooling off. So not a good idea to exercise outside in the middle of the day. However, we are blessed with also air conditioning. And we know that in the morning is the best time for us to do our hard workouts.
Yes, yeah. I know that I have to have a fan on me at all times, and I have for years and years. It's just something I've got to have, so I'm an air conditioning person myself.
Right.
What about, and do you find that people have a better, maybe, I don't know if commitment is the right word, to maybe exercising if they're doing with friends or a group exercise as opposed to on their own?
It's very individual. I would say that, so the question was, is it better to exercise with people? Will that help you be more accountable? And I have to ask you, is that something that's important to you? So if that is something that you're saying, I need somebody to help me, then yes, that is the thing for you. However, if you're fine doing it on your own, then great. Now, I did say earlier in the presentation that exercising with other people does improve our serotonin, our feel-good hormones, and our oxytocin, which are ways that we can bring our cortisol levels down. So being with people that you like is a good thing. So thinking about that as we age as well.
Great. And I know, here at TMC for Seniors, you mentioned we do have our mindfulness chair yoga. We do have Tai Chi, and we also have a seated Tai Chi class that we provide here. And then in addition to that, we also have a walking club. We don't do it during the summer, so we do take a break for the summer months, but we'll resume that back in September as well.
Nice.
So it's a really nice way to sort of get out and meet some new people too, and get your heart rate up and enjoy a nice walk here close to campus. So I want to thank you so much, Nicole. If anyone has any questions for you, I know I'm going to go ahead and put this back up for just a moment. Your email is nicole@bluemonarchhealth.com. If somebody is interested in your health coaching, can you just give us a brief overview of what that looks like?
Yeah. I love working with people individually. I also love working in small groups. So as an individual, it's very personalized. We definitely have a one-to-one conversation to see what's important to you. I'm not a type of coach that tells you, do it like this. I do have guidelines and ideas, and we generate what your hopes are for the future, not what my hopes are. And if you want to learn how to safely exercise, I definitely have ways of teaching that and helping enhance your technique as a personal trainer, in-group fitness instructor, yoga teacher, all of those things, many certifications to support that. And active aging, a functional aging certificate as well, which focuses on aging adults.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you so much for being here today. I'm going to turn it back over to you to answer any questions in the room, and we'll wrap up online.
All right. Thank you
so much. So thanks so much for being here today. We've got one more class that is related to our Women's Health Month, and it's an important one. It's going to be on Thursday, May 25th, and it will be Think Pink, Breast Cancer Detection and Treatment with Dr. Rebecca Viscuzzi with Arizona Oncology. If you're interested in watching this class or being here in person, please give us a call. Our phone number is 520-324-1960, or you can sign up online. Thanks for being here.